Hi everybody. I'm back. It's definitely been a little bit longer than a week or a lot longer. Had a little bit of an emergency. I might have, or I did. I checked myself into a mental health facility. And did 5 days in inpatient. And if anybody ever tells you that they're gonna go in for a psych hold for 72 hours, depending on the facility, it's probably not going to be just 72 hours. But then again, I've only been to one ever. And yeah, it actually, there was a lot of stuff that I needed to work through, still need to work through it. And it reminded me a lot of things, made me aware of a lot of things. I have kind of been in a little bit of a spiral for a while, and at some point I started, I actually realized and then overlooked it and kept going. And so while I was in there, we talked a lot about coping skills. We talked a lot about some stuff that my former therapist, before he left the practice, and I talked about, and it brought up some of the things that we talked about that I had forgotten about. So I have started tracking some behaviors and thought patterns and stuff back when we were talking about actually going through the process of kind of tracking and seeing if there's a need for diagnosing. I mean, obviously, there's not ever any real need necessarily, except for me in the case of ADHD, because sorry, my cats are swatting each other. I get off task really easily. I've had ADHD for a long time, but I got diagnosed last year because school was starting to get significantly harder. I was falling asleep trying to read my texts because they were not engaging enough, and I was having difficulty actually making myself do homework. So I went ahead and went through the process of the diagnosis so that I could start stimulant medication. And with the Adderall shortage going on, I have been taking Adderall for less than a year and did not realize how much of the work it was doing for me. I've managed my symptoms on my own for all of my life until last year. I managed the symptoms of all of my mental health stuff on my own for most of my life until I was 27. I had insurance for the first time, started doing the whole therapy and psychiatry thing. There was some counseling in high school, but never officially, and my parents were definitely really resistant to it until one of my closer friends committed suicide, and so they realized maybe this is a good idea. So I had weekly group therapy through high school once a week, and it was kind of like the highlight of my week because I was that kid. Even when I didn't share, I just kind of sat back and listened to everybody, and I had learned a lot and grew a lot from all of that. And obviously, I would share too when I needed to, but just having that was enough to help me get through a lot and manage a lot. But I stopped taking my Adderall. I realized all of these symptoms that I was managing on my own, besides the focusing and being able to make myself do school, I haven't had to work as hard, and I didn't realize that that was the case until I've been out of Adderall, and I just am everywhere. My focus is everywhere. My brain is everywhere. I know that there's a difference. So my thought patterns are just all over the place, and then when I'm trying to work on tasks, I'm just all over the place. And my irritability was one of the major symptoms that I didn't realize that the Adderall was actually really helping with. I just thought one day, hey, yo, I'm getting a little bit better at this. And the first time I ran out of Adderall during the shortage was when I realized my irritability just didn't suddenly get better. I was getting a little bit of help keeping it in check and managing it. So that was surprising. I mean, I guess it shouldn't have been, but it was enlightening. But as far as coping skills goes, because that's one of my little notes, um, while we were in, while I was in inpatient therapy, we talked a lot about coping skills, and when we would do our questionnaires and everything at the end of the day and the beginning of the day, and sometimes like in the middle of the day, uh, it always asks us what our strongest coping skills are, what coping skills we're going to use today. And so I typically had kind of the same coping skills because I write, and that's always been my number one. Um, and then I do yoga and meditate. Meditation's not necessarily a thing right now because I'm not fully capable of clearing my mind. And that's something that I actually didn't know until my former therapist told me, like, you're not doing that the right way because your brain is not allowing you to. So, and listening to music, because I do a lot of that, but sometimes it can be more harmful than therapeutic because I can also like get the right music to get myself into a mindset and just stew there, and uh, that can get excessive, and it's something that I like. I don't want to say enjoy doing because it's not like you necessarily enjoy that, but it's something that I can get caught up in pretty easily, and so I've been doing a lot lately to kind of divert myself from doing that, and I listen to a lot of different kinds of music. I was telling somebody recently that I downloaded a pretty extensive Latin dance music playlist because I forget sometimes about how much um, how much in my life, like how ingrained in my life, my uh, I guess I always call them like my Mexican family, but they weren't really my family. They were my ex's family. I lived with his cousins and stuff for a while, and I mean before and after that, even like just I've worked in restaurants all my life. I've gotten pretty close with a lot of kitchen staff over the years and stuff, and a lot of them are not necessarily always here legally, and um, so like living in a home where everybody's kind of not from here and they are just like living these traditions. And I mean, it wasn't necessarily like new. It was definitely a lot more, um, like it was so much more lively living in it than it was, like growing up around it and stuff. Because, I always lived in kind of like the poor neighborhoods or, the more like overrun neighborhoods and stuff. And I remember the first apartment that we lived in, when I was growing up. And Georgetown was, I guess, Section 8 housing, and um, I think there was a white family across the courtyard from us, but that was it as far as that, us and them. And then all the little kids, all of my friends, like from a young age, were like predominantly Hispanic. Um, my best friend, like my first best friend, her name was Rosie, and she was Hispanic, and we did everything together. And she had four sisters, I think. I think there were five of them, and her mom didn't drive because that was her dad didn't let her mom learn how to drive. Her mom didn't know English, so a lot of times like her kids would kind of translate for her like anywhere. But my mom always spent a lot of time like taking her places and doing things with her because her husband spent a lot of time in Mexico, and I think at one point might have just moved back to Mexico. I'm not sure, but it's something that's always been a really big part of my life, and I found myself just really missing it and not realizing. And then I would have like some of my like a few of the songs I have come on in my shuffles, and I'm like, this is something that brings me happiness. So I've downloaded a big playlist of that to like kind of go through my shuffles and just listen to when I'm feeling it sometimes. um and then I do a lot of kind of instrumental stuff, like uh well, there's like lo-fi stuff for when I'm sleeping slash sometimes at work. And then I like a lot of the frequencies, especially for sleeping. They help me sleep a lot. And then I totally keep losing my train of thought, but that is to be expected these days, I guess. Um, that was so. Oh yeah, the music being a coping mechanism. It's a pretty good coping mechanism. It can definitely uh go against me, especially if I'm letting it. But one thing I didn't realize was a coping mechanism until recently when I'm thinking about I can't make that joke right now because I don't want to end up back in a place where I was for making a joke that is just a joke. So at that point I realized like humor is one of my greatest coping mechanisms. I will be sad when I need to be sad, but a lot of times I'll keep the sadness at bay with humor for a little while, and then I'll come back from the sadness with humor. That's usually what brings me back first, is humor. Something's really funny, and I realize, like, I might be laughing a little bit. I like to crack a lot of jokes, but they're typically dark jokes, and I am working on some of the more less acceptable jokes. My mindset's always been if I've experienced it, I can joke about it, and I know that that's not necessarily a fair assumption. So I am working on all that stuff, but I do use a lot of humor, and I had to really start paying attention. I mean, I've had to start paying a lot of attention to myself, and I already think about myself too much as it is. It's just not the right things that I think about. So having to pay attention to my thought processes and my the things that I'm doing that are repetitive or like harmful or just uh, bad in general. I guess those are all similar, both the harmful and the bad. But um, I'm not going to address any of my other notes on there. There's a note about kind of when I was talking about growing up in like such a predominantly Hispanic community, and then also just living in the home I lived in and seeing some of the stuff that I saw. Something that happened at work or something that I saw at work kind of brought back a few things that are just kind of like definitely need to be addressed on a bigger level, but I'm going to address them at some point. I don't want to make a promise about it being next week because we obviously have seen that I am not the greatest with time management skills, and I'm going to work on that. I know that I should probably do better with my videos and learn how to do some editing and stuff and do all the things, but also make a schedule and stick to it because that's also an issue. I'm relearning how to do all of the things right now, and it is a hard task. There was a lot that I wasn't paying attention to when I was kind of spiraling, and when I thought about it, when I started thinking about when everything started, I assumed that it was towards the end of last summer, early fall, because that's when some of the more a lot of pivotal things happened throughout the whole year last year and the end of the year before, but that's when some of the pivotal things happened. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that's where it started. And I was thinking more about it and thinking backwards. And I realized, no, that's when I recognized it probably like most like, I guess, cognizantly, like that I can think of, and chose to ignore it. I mean, I don't want to say I ignored it. Maybe I thought that I was working on it, but I wasn't doing it the right way. And it actually kind of all started around the time that my biological dad died last February, and going through his funeral and kind of learning stuff about his history and childhood, and being reminded of some things in mine that I hadn't thought about for a long time, thinking like reminded of some things that I've probably pushed out for a long time, and having some realizations that were kind of changed the way that I saw everything at one point. But I am going to stop with my chattering there because I do want to read a poem that I wrote after I got out of the facility. I ended up pretty much going back to work right away and working a really hard week, having to go through a lot of outpatient therapy. And balance some things, which balance has been my biggest focus. It's been something that I chose in group therapy in there, and something that has come up in a lot of places, and not just me reminding myself about balance, but people bringing up balance or reading about it in my classes and stuff. So in this finding balance thing, actually it wasn't about balance. We were doing some paperwork, and that's a word that I picked for focus, but one of the things that a lot of the paperwork asked concerning suicidal thoughts and ideations was, did you make the plan for, or did you do this? And there's a list of reasons, and it was because, or it was kind of a scale between two, and it was to escape the sadness or to get revenge. And throughout the scale, there's like differing amounts of both, but like it never occurred to me that people commit suicide to get revenge, and that kind of shook me a little bit. And so I wanted to kind of get some thoughts out about it, so I decided to write about it pretty shortly after I got out. So they asked me if I would kill myself for revenge. It's a thought that makes me cringe, but it sits in the back of my mind, and I know I might be off my hinges. That'll show them, the paper said. Now that phrase hurts. That phrase haunts the that phrase haunts the fringes of my thoughts. It speaks to me, the ultimate revenge. Why did they plant this thought in my head? I am trying to mend. I am not wanting to be dead. Why can't I just hold... My handwriting is bad. Why can't I just load some numbness into a syringe and pierce my skin, load it in my blood, then lay back and binge on the freedom of not feeling this relentless emptiness that persists to tinge every waking moment that sounds more like peace than revenge? I did not, I didn't read that well because I struggled with some of my writing. It can get really sloppy when I'm a little bit frantic. Not that I was frantic in my mind, but it was, the words were a lot faster than normal, and I was trying to write them a lot faster, and it got a little bit frantic. So I know I rushed through that. It's because I saw how much time I was taking on this video, and wanted to go ahead and speed it up because that's a long time. Anyway, I'm going to go. I will be back, and I will do another video on some of my other little prompts, and I'm definitely going to be thinking about a lot more. I'm going to be working on my poetry project and a kind of like spoken word poetry project simultaneously. Maybe not simultaneously. We might be putting off the spoken word thing for a while, simply because that's still a little bit nerve-wracking. So I hope y'all like my video. If you watched the whole thing. If not, I mean, I guess I kind of don't blame you, but y'all should, because I think that I'm pretty entertaining sometimes. But I do want to share a lot of my ideas and a lot of the things that I write with the world, because I think that there are some people that I could help, and I am also doing this for the most part just to make myself, because ever since I was small, I let my anxiety hold me back from doing a lot of things, and regardless of whether a lot of people watch these or not, I want to push myself, so I am.